Welcome inside Ohio Stadium. Dan Hope joined by Andy Anders following Ohio State's season opener, a 52-6 win over Akron. And Andy, we have started a lot of these videos over the last 8 months talking about one Jeremiah Smith. We are going to do it again because the freshman sure lived up to the hype in his first game as a Buckeye.
He's built different. That's what Ryan Day said. That's what the kids say. And I think he proved it out there today, man. And you saw him make some mistakes early, right? Had a dropped pass on a tunnel screen that might have gone for a touchdown, looked wide open, was a gorgeously designed play. Had a penalty early on, but he was able to shirk off each of those mistakes and go out and just ball. I mean, the end zone grab, the first touchdown catch of his career was massive, made a fantastic, just a classic high point turnaround, back shoulder ball on a fade. You had, before that, he had two really big third down grabs. I thought he had a 3rd and 10 conversion that really helped get Ohio State's offense finally going in a positive direction after it went 3 and out on its first drive. Then later, saw a slot fade that was a nicely thrown ball from Will Howard. He catches it with one hand and had a second touchdown on the day as well. So it just lived up to all the hype that we've been cultivating this offseason about him, that the coaching staff has been cultivating this offseason about him, that has been talked about and discussed since he was signed as the #1 prospect in his recruiting class. So everything you wanted to see out of Jeremiah Smith today, I think you got that. And it seems if he's not guy 1 for Ohio State, he's at least guy 2 behind Emeka Egbuka, it seems, in that receiver rotation.
Outside of Jeremiah Smith, not the best first half for Ohio State's offense. The Buckeyes scoring only 17 points before halftime. Definitely a little bit clunky first game. I think it took Will Howard a little bit while to sell in. I think the offensive line with no Donovan Jackson out there, rotating a little bit at right guard with Tegra Shabola and Carson Hinsman. You definitely saw some things that were not perfect in that first half from the offense. And, Ryan Day said after the game he felt like they were a little bit too uptight on offense, but he felt like they needed to play looser and felt like they did do that in the second half when the Buckeyes scored 35 points, ultimately won the game by 46. So you can't be too upset about a 46-point win. Not quite a cover for the Buckeyes, but still a convincing, comfortable victory for the Buckeyes. And certainly, if we're looking for other highlights, you look at the defense and their ability to come up with takeaways. They've talked about it all offseason. As good as they were defensively last year, one area where they want to grow this year is making more big plays, making plays on the ball, and ideally turning those takeaways into touchdowns. And that's what they did today. 3 takeaways by the Ohio State defense, 2 of them touchdowns.
Yeah, it was everything you wanted to see from the Ohio State defense and everything that they've talked about all offseason, like you said. I also thought, man, this defensive line, and I know Akron's not exactly world beaters up front, right? They're going to have much better offensive lines they play this season, but it was ferocious. JT Tuimoloau wasn't out there long, but man, does he look good. And then the second unit, Kenyatta Jackson Jr. had a few nice pressures. You had Caden Curry forcing the fumble that Lathan Ransom scoops and scores for a touchdown, Ohio State's first defensive touchdown, and then the other one was a batted pass that Gabe Powers runs to the house.
Andrew Houston getting a hand on that.
And Andrew Houston got a hand on that one. And that's way down the defensive in-depth chart. But that second unit on the defensive line there wasn't a huge drop-off from that first group that was out there. They were still making plays, generating pressure. And man, if it wasn't 3 steps and out for Akron's quarterback, whether that was Ben Finley or Taj Bullock, he was getting smacked. And that is if the defensive line continues to generate that type of pressure throughout the season to where it's only quick reads and quick throws that are going to be viable for offenses, man, it's going to make it easy to scheme up for Jim Knowles.
Yeah, I think we both felt a little bad for Ben Finley by the time he left the game because, man, he got beat up. I mean, and those defensive ends were getting after him. I thought JT Tuimoloau had a fantastic game. Tyleik Williams had a fantastic game. But to your point, I think what really stood out today was the depth of the defensive line. I mean, I think you can really see them being 5 deep at that defensive end position with Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Mitchell Melton, all doing some nice things today. Defensive tackle depth. We saw Caden McDonald play a good amount. Hero Kanu getting in on that, fumble that was recovered by Lathan Ransom. Speaking of Lathan Ransom, I think we'd probably both agree that Jeremiah Smith was a player of the game today. But if you're looking at a defensive player of the game, Lathan Ransom probably leads that list. He had 9 tackles today, 2 tackles for loss, plus that fumble return touchdown. This is a guy who, of course, had his season cut short last year by the Lisfranc injury that he suffered in his foot. To come back that way, certainly a big confidence booster for him going into his 5th-year senior season.
Yeah, his trigger impressed me today. Just the ability to fly down from the safety position and make plays all over the field, whether it was scooping that fumble. I thought his second tackle for loss that he had, I believe it was a screen pass to the outside. He comes down from safety and just makes a beautiful play in the backfield. The first was on a blitz, and I think definitely saw some more creative blitz packages as promised from Jim Knowles today. Saw Caleb Downs blitzing a few times, Lathan Ransom blitzing there on that tackle for loss as mentioned. I think, speaking of depth, though, C.J. Hicks may have started at linebacker, but to me, the biggest standout at linebacker today might have been Arvell Reese. Arvell was all over the field, flexing the athleticism, missed a tackle or two in there, but made up for it with just awesome instincts and recovery speed and sideline to sideline playing. He had a gorgeous play on it. It was just, I believe it was also a screen or maybe a quick out that was to the other side of the field. He was backside on the play, and he ran all the way across the field to go make a tackle on a play that looked like it was going to gain really good yards for Akron, only ended up being 4. So Arvell Reese, I think, showed why today, and it seems he has, passed Gabe Powers sort of in that linebacker rotation, and is kind of right there in that mix for playing time. I think he's probably their 4th linebacker right now.
And it's pretty good when your 5th linebacker is running back an interception for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So I think the linebacker depth really stood out today. I think, Sonny Styles playing that Mike position, a position we didn't really expect to see him play much. He has to start at that position. He's the guy, the green dot in his helmet, first game for Ohio State since that was implemented in college football. He looked very comfortable in that Mike linebacker role. C.J. Hicks, like you said, makes some plays as well. So I think you feel good about the depth that you have at that linebacker position. Another guy I got to highlight is Brandon Inniss, because we've talked a lot about this drought that Ohio State has had on return touchdowns. I come out of today thinking we're going to see Brandon Inniss return a punt for a touchdown this year, because he just has a look out there. You could tell that every time he wants to bring that thing back for a touchdown. And our Josh Paloha made a good point. Brandon Inniss had 60 punt return yards today. Ohio State had 75 punt returns all of last season. And so we'll see if Brandon Inniss can continue that on a week-to-week basis. But he certainly looks like a guy that can be a weapon back there. And I think special teams in general, it was an area that got a lot of scrutiny for the last couple of years with Parker Fleming coordinating that unit. It wasn't perfect today. There were a couple of penalties, and so definitely some things for Ohio State to clean up in that regard. But we saw Jaden Fielding make his only field goal attempt of the day. A bit of a surprise at punter, as we saw Joe McGuire get the start over Nick McLarty, but I think he was solid. And then definitely seeing that spark from Brandon Inniss in the punt return game, I think gives you some excitement about the potential for Ohio State to have more of a spark in that area than they've had in a long time.
Yeah, special teams, I think, the punt return with Brandon Inniss, to your point, I tweeted out during the game, I think he's going to score a touchdown this year. There's a different aura, and while I think Emeka was a good returner, especially on kick return in the past, you don't want to risk his body with the amount of reps he's played and the hits he's taken throughout his career. But B, I actually like Brandon a little better back there returning punts, because he's a little bit shiftier of an athlete. You want somebody who can make guys miss in the open field, make a quick cut and go for yardage, and he really flexed that ability today. And to your point, 75 yards last year. Brandon had a 21-yard return called back, so if that had stood, it would have been 81, and then he exceeds last year's total. But no doubt he'll pass it soon if teams keep giving him opportunities to return the football. So special teams, I think, overall, yes, a couple penalties, but there was no, outside of that, it was mostly you get good flashes from Brandon Inniss, but there wasn't a lot of bad to say about the special teams, which I think is the main point. And Joe McGuire, too, Ryan Day pointed out this week, he had named Nick McLarty the starter previously at punter, so it was a surprise to see Joe trot out there, but the consistency is what was important. And I think we saw at practice, Nick McLarty's got a huge leg, and when he connects, it can go 70, 80 yards sometimes even, but when he misses, it's a big miss. And I think the indication we got was more of those misses showed up in practice this week, and the consistency, Joe McGuire doing it rep in, rep out, is what won him the job. And both of his punts were good today. I had no complaints there. Ohio State did a good job on punt today.
Well, we will have a lot more to come from Ohio State's season opener over on 11warriors.com, so stay tuned with us for full coverage of Ohio State football. And we'll be back next week when Ohio State plays Western Michigan at night in its second game of the season. So thanks for joining us here on the Postgame Show, and we'll talk to you again soon.